his head measurements, if I had a pencil, do you have a pencil, Mr. Nat?
Mr. Nat?
I said me. I have an ink pen, but I don't want it.
You got, you're saying you have a finger pen.
No, I got it.
My mom.
Anyway, how many heads is this guy? When we measure, as soon as she brings this pencil, I'm going to do that on this piece of paper so you actually can see what is kosher.
That's a pencil? Yeah, it's a pencil. Use it.
Thank you. Okay. Example. When we're measuring, y'all looking or you playing with your damn stick?
Give it to us.
Don't give them toys until you want them to play with them.
Put your wood down and watch me. Okay. When we're analyzing the head, it's a projection. Meaning this unit from here to here is one head, right? You would not take a tape measure and start right here and go to the top, because then obviously it's going to be longer when you straighten it out. So that's what we mean by a projection measurement. It's from, in fact, a projection on a human head. That's why we put it in a square. It's from the chin to the top of the head, which is clear back here, not necessarily the forehead or what you see as a face and so on. That's a projection. These are, okay. So, we got you one head. And once I know that, I'm going to take, and I cheat a little bit. When I say I cheat a little bit, I'm gonna push this out just a little bit further than the actual bone. I'll push this out just a little bit further because I'm measuring form to form, not necessarily bone to bone. And I'll show you another reason. Let's say this shoulder, if I projected this right across here as the top of the shoulder blade, and I went down to where the actual form changes, it's in front of the shoulder. So this is the shoulder length that I see, not from what the scapula is. Y'all follow what I mean? Because, does that make any sense to you?
No.
No.
I'm sorry.
Holy shit, it's always there. Okay. I'm just teasing.
Hey, everybody else saw it too. They just.
Well, we'll look at another animal, or we'll take an animal. Is there any animals in here that have already been done? No, that's not an animal. That's a pigment.
There's a tiger in the back.
Well, we'll find one in a minute. But anyway, what I use for my measurements are form changes. But they're dictated, yes, they're dictated because of the bones. I mean, the bone structure that's everything. Without that bone structure, you've got no measurements. You've got no comparative anatomy. You don't have anything. Okay. So anyway, that's why I say I'm going to the front of this, because that's where the form will roll to. Form will roll to right here. So if I utilize his head, now Fox has got a big head compared to other animals. Got a big head, little body. So he's going to be less than, say, a dog, horse, lion, tiger, bear.
Oh my.
Thank you. I knew that was coming. And I got to put my glasses on to see what I'm doing. Okay. So example, here's one, and then two, and basically 2.5 heads long. If it's a projection of this measurement. If I go to shoulder form, it would be, let me do that one more time, it would be 2/3 of a head. Now I got another measurement to take. I'm going to go from this side of the shoulder form to the elbow. And by the way, that's going to be almost, nope, that's 3/4 of a head. 1/4 to this making sense to you? Then we go from let's go from the elbow to the wrist. Form change to form change. We're dealing with hot dang, one head, okay? On a normal animal, you're almost always gonna have one head, one head, one head. It just happens that way. Rear's the same way. This is one head, I can already tell you. One, this should be 1 1/4 because it's all, yeah it is. It's always usually a little longer from the top of the knee to the bottom of the foot. But do you guys see what I mean by, when I measure this, I don't just measure this one little bone in here, because that's not where the form is. It's like if I'm measuring my leg, and I'm doing a seated figure, I would measure from the top of the knee to the bottom of the foot, which is not the bone, but where the bone form, or bone.
Like a muscle.
No, it's as long as it can get. Meaning if I measure to the middle of the knee and then I add some to the top, it's just making confusion. You use bones to measure form changes, okay, and or accordingly. So this is 1, this is 1 1/4. And this, I'm going to say, is real close to 1. Everybody with me? And this is how we get this little varmint into proportion. I also go from the tip top of his head, and I will go back. As long as you do it consistently, I'm going to say I probably would relate to an area right in front of the scapula, because his neck is going to be longer than, no it isn't. It's going to be about basically one head, okay? One. Is this making sense? We also have to know how deep he is. He is a teeny bit less than one head at the rib cage. He is also a head and a half at the rib cage. He is, as far as similarities, I'll go ahead and just tell you real quick. Our rib cage is 1 1/2 tall, so is his. We got a half of a head usually in between our hip block, and he's got a little bit of smaller hip block than we do. Ours is a head tall, half a head in between here and here, meaning the hip block and the rib cage. His is a little more here and a little less here. You can see what I mean. His hip block's about 3/4 of a head tall. When I say tall, I'm talking about this. However, very similar measurements in animals as in us. How many heads tall is the average so-called torso?
Like 2.5.
You have had figure drawing. Maybe
Yeah.
you should let these people answer that. That's wrong.
I figured it was.
Okay. Rib cage. Let's think about this. Here you go. Rib cage, 1 1/2 heads tall. Then there's a half a head of space in between the bottom of the rib cage, top of the hip block. Is everybody following this? So that's 2 heads.
I said 2.
That's just the rib cage and empty guts. Then you got hip block, which is another head. Now we're up to 3. And if you've got a fat ass and you're sitting on it, then it's 3 1/4. Do you get it? Okay.
I never had to draw that model.
But that's true. But that's a play on words also. But if you are a short-waisted person, that can affect it, or a long, stretchy quarter horse. No, thoroughbred, excuse me, that makes a difference also. Is everybody following the similarity? I'll just go ahead and cover some of this stuff. Let's say my rib cage. Head and a half tall, and I'm short, by the way, but head and a half tall, head in a third wide, only one head deep. Make sense? That's just our measurement, and that's generic. Yours are less. You're Gary. So, normal animals are similar in housing the amount of lungs, heart, liver, gizzard. Y'all follow what I'm talking about? You're dealing with a dog, for instance, is a head and a third deep, but he's only one head wide, y'all, but he's still a head and a half tall. So that's because there's no scapula, and for the last 10,000 years or 2 million, who knows, we've got wider this way because we got a scapula, we got room, we got, and we don't need to make our arms do this when we're running. We just, I don't run anywhere anymore. Is everybody with this? There are certain proportions that you have to have. And when you blow this thing up, let's say, I don't want to get it any bigger than maybe 7 inches at the shoulders. Guys, if we get these too big, they're hard to manipulate. It's just too much clay. It's a mess. And I don't want a little trinket that you set on, you know what I mean, on a knick-knack shelf. But 7 inches at the shoulder, by the way, I don't have a really. This is probably 4.5, 5, 4 and a half. If I made this guy 7, you see what I mean? I'm increasing, well, if we made him twice as big, that would be 9. And that would be, his body would be this big. And then a head up here. Are you with me? That's too big. I mean, that's monstrous. I would encourage no bigger than 7. And probably no smaller than 6. This is too small. This would make a little knick-knack, especially if you put him in a position that he's all curled up or whatever a fox is going to do. He's just going to be a little bitty thing. Okay.
Are we supposed to make it like 7 inches tall, the skeleton, or what the thing's going to be?
7 inches, if a side profile view is what we're basing our size on. If he is going to be 7 inches at the shoulders, meaning standing side profile, then I would make him, or that would make him, excuse me, this tall. See what I mean? Which means this, it's just going to explain, we're just going to blow it up. Okay? Which once you do that and you realize that, well, let's do it this way. We already said how many heads long was this guy? 2 and do you remember? 2.5? 2 and a half. So let's just say we increase this size by 40%, which 50% is right there. So 50. So let's make him about this big. Now all I had to do was just decide on this guy right here is now my head size. Everybody with that?
You don't have to do a bunch of math?
No. All you do is, in fact, I will take my tool. my magic tool, and I will make a little mark on my tool so I consistently make it the right size. And I say, there it is. And I already know he's 2.5 heads long, don't I? So I pick a place out here that I'm going to start, and I say 1, 2.5. Now he's going to be this big. Just make your little tick marks on there, and then come back and gesture this guy in. Is that making sense to you? It's pretty simple to blow him up. Is that big enough? I'm going to check it one more time. You sure? 2.5. Let's check the original. Uno. Doso. Yeah. 2 and actually more than that. 2 and a little more than a half. So maybe we want to make this head just a little bigger. Let's make it a little bigger. And the reason that I'm going to make this decision right now is if we lay him down, we can make him that size. If you might stand him up and have his head looking at one direction or the other, the composition is such that I need to be able to get my hand up his hiney to press the clay in the mold. I know that sounds strange, but we do. I don't see one right here, but there's a plaster mold over there, which is a piece mold. We'll take probably 3 to 5 pieces to cast these things, and that way we can reproduce them. We can make 2 copies, 3 copies, you know what I mean, with clay. We'll press the clay in there to where it's about as thick as my finger. And the problem is, I said we'll press it in there, so if we put that mold back together, we put rubber bands around it to hold it tight to keep, you know, the impression of that fox in there. Then I gotta be able to I lay it down on the side and get my hand inside the mold to be able to press this clay in. It's like, can I do a giraffe? And I say, sure. I don't know how you're gonna press this. I don't know how you're gonna press that clay up into his head if his head is clear up here and it's only that big. You know what I mean? This big round. There's no way you can do that. So if you take his head and you put it around down on his body, to where the bottom of the mold is actually it's built like the pyramids, like a very triangular, larger at the bottom, smaller at the top. I'll turn it upside down, I get my hand in there and I can press it all the way up into his head. Does that make sense to you? So this is one of those areas where, let's say it this way, in ceramic sculpture, which is what you see, we're doing this with clay. My goodness, the design is probably one of the most important components to whether it's effective or not that you're going to utilize. Meaning, if it's a poor design, I don't care how good a job you do on the clay, your mold is probably going to screw up. You're probably not going to get it out. And then you're going to have to do that really good job again because you're going to have to remake that something when it comes out. Is everybody following? The better you do on each step of the process and or your animal completion, the better off you're going to be. Design step number 1. Big at the bottom. And when I say if you want it big at the bottom and you want him setting up and his head curled around or whatever on his body, then you're going to have to make sure that your original is large enough, which means his rear end is going to have to be, and feet are going to have to be this big. Because I got to get you have to get your hand to press the top. Is this absorbing, juniors? Okay. How hard is this? I make it a little simpler even than what we're doing. Once we've decided, I don't know what your composition is going to be. Before we ever when we can change the size, all we gotta do is change the head size. We got all the stuff right here. But then once you change that head size, then everything is proportionate to that, right? You can actually do your drawing and then at the last minute say, I wish I'd made it just a little bit bigger. All you gotta do is change your head size. Change your head size on your tool. Every time you use your tools, that's what you're measuring. Units of measurement are supposed to be compared to. So it'll work. Does that make sense to you? All right. If you will put these little guys in a square and or rectangle and or whatever they're closest to, meaning if I did this, I'd say, okay, top to bottom, ta-da, he's a fraction longer than he is tall. Does everybody get that? Quarter horse, almost square, meaning withers to foot, chest to rear end back here, square, neck coming off of that, head, boom, boom, boom. Make this as simple as you can proportionately to start with, because that's what you're going to use when you get over to clay. Your calipers are really handy little tools, meaning if I'm making this little guy and he cannot be any longer than this. Oh, maybe a fraction if I straightened him out this way, which you're not going to do, I'm convinced. But does everybody follow what I mean? There's certain measurements that you can take with a caliper, boom, boom, and hey, you're good to go. You know where you know where you are quickly, or at least then you begin to draw. There's different ways that we're going to approach this. Obviously, I'd like for you to draw it. I don't care if it's detailed like this. I do care if the proportions are on the money. Get the proportions wrong, you just wasted your time, my time. Are you playing with my foot?
Is that your foot?
Yes. I liked it. I was just wondering. Good job, Lucy. Okay. Where was I? She played with my foot and got me off track.
You wanted the proportions to be on the money, that's what you said.
Proportions have to be on the money. And yes, you can suggest, I mean, I'm not expecting you to do a lot of detail unless you want to, and if you do, that's even better. Does that make sense? Okay. How many pictures are you going to need?
As many as you can find.
As many as you can find. How many different angles?
As many as you can find.
A lot of them, almost all of them, will be foreshortened, meaning there will be foreshortening involved in the photograph. In fact, if it's a photograph, there is foreshortening involved. However, it will tell you different things. You might find a profile of the head, and the rest of the thing may be foreshortened where you can't even use it. I don't care. We'll use the parts that make sense and tell us information. Okay. Plenty of photographs. We're going to take enough clay that is a grade A, double A, egg, meaning no bigger. And we're going to put the animal in the position that you want it to be in. Little bitty guy, 20 minutes. Everybody follow him? I'm not looking for eyeballs. I can do one in about 23 seconds. That's what kind of detail I'm talking about. Pinch his head out, put your ears, body. There's his legs. He's looking at me like this. Okay, that's all I need to know. Then we have something to look at. Wait, you with me? As far as the position he's in, we just need accurate measurements. We can put it in the position with the clay. Drawing it in the position will tell you nothing except the position. And you only get foreshortening with that. It really just doesn't help you that much, guys. If you do drawings of detail that will help you, it's like, what does an eye really look like? What is the nose? I mean, and if you will get your little books that I asked you to get, which is Jack Ham drawing the animals How to Draw Animals by Jack Ham, or Ken Holmgren's it's a drawing book. However, it has all this documentation on animals, different animals. There is a skeleton in the little yellow book on almost all the skeletons that you'll need. Not all of them, but almost. What am I leaving out, Jackie, that they're going to need to do?
This is only, that's it.
Pardon?
This is it so far.
Well, there's no need for me to draw this on here, but it's the how-to. If you relate to this versus this, ooh, he's longer than he is tall, and you know how long he's supposed to be. I mean, you can get to this really quickly by head sizes. Make some kind of sense here, okay? Then I would say you go ahead and you do this, and the next step is to grab a little bitty piece of clay, pinch him out into the position. And obviously, I hope you have a lot of photographs. It is hot in here. Other steps. Main thing is, well, even that was supposed to be the elephant. Let me add that thing. It's pretty funny. However, you got the big butt. You see what I mean? How big would we have to make this in order and blow this up in order to be able to get your hand inside of a mold of this? Because by the way, when you make your original, and then once we shim this thing, meaning we separate it off and we put plaster on area, on the directions that it can pull off and not jerk his head off. Take the original stuff out, throw that away. You're thinking, oh my God, I worked so hard on it. The original is not that's not your valuable piece of equipment. It's the mold, because we make all kinds of casts with that mold. If you do a good job. If you don't, you can go back in there and make another one. Except you probably we won't even talk about that. We're going to do a good job. Because it is almost terrible torture to have to go make another one, because you'll probably ruin this when you're making your mold. Everybody follow me? Because you've got shims in it, it dries out, it's a mess. Throw it away, put your cast in the new one. So how big would this have to be? This is going to have to be about this wide. It's going to have to be 3 times this big. At least.
It's up there.
Okay. She made that. She never cast it. She never completed this. But you can see if you turn it sideways, there's a shim in the back of it where there's 3 different pieces. Maybe she did cast it, but I don't think so. No. Questions?
When are we supposed to have all this stuff done?
By the end of the semester. Meaning the animal is from now
And
on.
then this. all the
Drawings,
dimensions.
try to have these by, we won't have class on Monday, by the way. You'll be eating hamburgers and
Fireworks.
drinking lemonade.
Yes, we'll be drinking hard.
Yeah, I know what you'll be drinking.
Hard liquor. Yeah.
No, whatever. Anyway,
You will.
think about it. Anyway.
Wednesday.
It would be nice if you had
Okay.
the drawings done by Wednesday, so we can actually start on a small
The fist has
gesture.
to, the fist has to be pretty much done today because we're gonna be starting this stuff on Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll look at them next Wednesday, because she's told you Monday, and I ain't coming up here to look at the feast on Monday, because it's a holiday. It's Jackie's fault.